Welcome to Super Easy History. In this episode, we're going to discuss a nation that completely upended the balance of power in Europe. The army with a state, Prussia, and its most famous leader, Frederick the Great. Before we begin, if you enjoy learning about all sorts of history-related content on Super Easy History, make sure you don't miss anything by subscribing and clicking on the notification bell down below. So, Frederick the Great, the longest reigning Prussian monarch, the man who established Prussia as a great power and laid the foundations for the unification of Germany. Originally, it did not appear as if military greatness would be Frederick's legacy. He was born in 1712 to the soon-to-be King Frederick William I of Prussia. His father led an austere, Protestant, militaristic lifestyle. He built up Prussia's armed forces and refrained from the lavish personal spending characteristic of monarchs of the time, instead ensuring Prussia's economy remained stable and prosperous. In contrast, young Frederick had little interest in the ways of soldiering. To his father's irritation, Frederick was much more interested in Enlightenment subjects like philosophy, art, language, and culture, rather than the military. Frederick's lifestyle clashed with his father's strong Protestant views. In 1730, he attempted to flee from his father to England with his tutor, friend, and probable lover, Hermann von Katte. Unfortunately for the two of them, though, their plans were discovered and Frederick William accused them of treason. The two were imprisoned, and on the 6th of November, 1730, Frederick was forced to witness von Katte's brutal execution, fainting just before the killing blow was struck. Frederick was pardoned by his father, but engaged in several more homosexual relationships over the course of his life, and upon his father's death, Frederick never spent more than a few days a year with the wife Frederick William had forced him to marry. Frederick, Crown Prince of Prussia, succeeded his father as Frederick II, King in Prussia, on the 31st of May, 1740, and proceeded to apply his Enlightenment ideals to governing. Over the course of his reign, Frederick funded artistic ventures and befriended famed Enlightenment thinker Voltaire, though he in no way gave up his power as an absolute monarch. Because of this, Frederick is widely regarded today as an enlightened despot, a king who rules with absolute power, but uses it primarily for the benefit of his subjects. He worked to modernize Prussia, he reformed the judiciary, mostly allowed for the freedom of speech within his realm, and implemented protectionist policies that grew the Prussian economy. He also significantly increased religious freedom and toleration within the kingdom. As a religious skeptic himself, he was not overly concerned with the religions of his subjects. Unlike the rulers of many Protestant states at the time, Frederick did not actively persecute Catholics, but did generally refuse to appoint them to high positions within the government. Like many rulers of the time, though, he was an anti-Semite and considered most Jews to be inferior. Upon becoming king, Frederick became much more involved in the Prussian military than he had in his youth. Over the course of his reign, he was almost never seen out of military uniform. Frederick William I had expanded upon Prussia's already powerful military, and by the time of his death and Frederick the Great's succession, Prussia had one of the most powerful armies in Europe. In December of 1740, just 7 months into his reign, Frederick put his soldiers to good use. The Holy Roman Emperor and Archduke of Austria, Charles VI, died in October and was succeeded in Austria by his daughter Maria Theresia. Frederick quickly denounced the new Archduchess, as German Salic law forbade a woman from ruling in her own right. In reality, the death of Charles VI and the ensuing instability in Austria and the Holy Roman Empire were seized upon by Frederick and the King of France, Louis XV, as an excuse to attack Austria and for Frederick to seize control of the wealthy province of Silesia. The War of Austrian Succession lasted for 8 years between 1740 and 1748. Frederick the Great and Prussia were only involved for parts of the conflict, though, known together as the First and Second Silesian Wars. Austria agreed to hand over most of Silesia to Prussia in the 1742 Treaty of Berlin, which ended the First Silesian War. But 2 years later, the situation changed dramatically. Austria's position in the War of Succession was strengthened, and Frederick feared they would attempt to retake Silesia. In August 1744, he started the Second Silesian War in an attempt to contain them. It lasted for just over a year. Prussia's well-disciplined military swung the War of Succession back in favor of the anti-Austria coalition. In June of 1745, Frederick spectacularly defeated Austria at the Battle of Hohenfriedberg. Frederick's slightly outnumbered Prussian forces smashed Austria's. He suffered just over half as many losses as the Austrians and took nearly 6,000 prisoners. It was after this battle that Frederick began to be called the Great by his contemporaries. By Christmas, Prussia and Austria again made peace, securing Frederick the Great's new Silesian territories. The War of Austrian Succession continued for another 3 years without Prussian involvement. The eventual peace treaty confirmed Maria Theresa as Archduchess of Austria, her husband, Francis I, as Holy Roman Emperor, and further cemented Prussia's control of Silesia. Following his victory in the Second Silesian War, Frederick the Great's Prussia remained at peace for 10 years. But in 1756, Prussia kicked off a major conflict between all the great powers of Europe, the 7 Years' War. Prussia launched an invasion of a smaller German state, Saxony, hoping to secure resources and manpower to use against Austria. Frederik's troops were largely successful and advanced through Saxony into Austria and Bohemia, striking first as his enemies in Austria and Russia fully intended to partition his kingdom amongst themselves and render Prussia a rump state. Despite his initial success, the war quickly went downhill for Prussia. While Frederick's armies were distracted in Saxony and Bohemia, Russia invaded through the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and Sweden attacked Prussia in Pomerania. To make matters worse, Frederick's most powerful ally, Britain, was unable to provide assistance as their forces were distracted fighting against France all across the globe. The Prussian cause was not lost though. In 1762, Empress Elizabeth of Russia died suddenly, sending shockwaves across the anti-Prussia coalition. Her successor, Peter III, grew up in Germany and was sympathetic to Frederick. In the so-called Miracle of the House of Brandenburg, Peter III withdrew from the conflict, leaving Frederick in a much stronger position. Soon after Russia's exit, the 7-Year War concluded in 1763, with no territorial changes in regards to Prussia. The war cemented Frederick the Great's legacy as a strategic genius and Prussia's place as a great power. Silesia wasn't the only territory Frederick the Great was interested in, though. Towards the end of his life, he looked towards West Prussia, and wanted to seize it from Poland-Lithuania to link up his lands. The other great powers, mainly Austria and Russia, were not eager to see Prussia gain power over them in Poland. As a solution, Frederick engineered the first partition of Poland in 1772, which split up a large portion of the country between the three powers. Despite the fact that he had fought both Russia and Austria not 10 years earlier to prevent the same thing happening to his kingdom. Without firing a single shot, Frederick acquired West Prussia and over 500,000 new subjects to boot. With the entirety of Prussia now under his control, and the Austrian Holy Roman Emperor humbled, Frederick was able to elevate himself from king in to king of Prussia. On the 17th of August, 1786, Frederick the Great died at the age of 74 in his summer palace. Having never fathered a child, he was succeeded by his nephew, Frederick William II. The reign of Frederick the Great was undeniably one of the most successful of any Prussian or German leader. He embodied Enlightenment ideals and made Prussia into a great power. His reign set the stage for his successors to unify the disparate German states into one empire. He was also a man of his time, one who achieved many of his goals through conquest. But when one looks at his achievements, compares him to his contemporaries, and certainly when you compare him to many monarchs before his time, he truly was Frederick the Great. Thank you for watching Super Easy History, Frederick the Great. If you enjoyed this video and want to suggest a future topic, leave a comment down below and it just might be the next Super Easy History video. Also, don't forget to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss any future Super Easy History content.